welcome to episode 7 of Raise the Floor. Today we've got Sam Winsbury with us from Kurogo. We'll get into a little bit about your expertise, which is personal branding, but I kind of read a bit about your story over the last few days, and am I right in saying it got started when you was in uni posting on LinkedIn?
That's correct.
So take us from like that point and what happened and how it sort of evolved into a business.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been pretty entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was doing at uni was I was trying to get like any freelance marketing gigs I could get. Just it depends who I tell. Some people I say it's for my career. Some people I say it's just extra bit of beer money whilst I was at uni, to be honest. But yeah, I had a passion for marketing. Was kind of literally learned everything on the job myself. Didn't study marketing or go for any formal training. I was just learning things myself and trying to basically sell it on to local businesses. And I'd go to networking events, I'd reach out to people on Facebook, I'd send emails, and I was constantly met with the same response, which was, who the hell are you? You're just this 19-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
And fair enough, I get why people thought that, but I think I certainly knew more about marketing than some of these local businesses.
Yeah.
So I took to LinkedIn to start posting content about it. I thought, what's the most businessy place where all business owners hang out? It was LinkedIn, right? So I went to LinkedIn and started just sharing the things I was learning. As I would learn something or try something, I'd share it on there. And for a 19-year-old at uni, I was part of the football team as well. You can imagine that was quite a strange thing to do, and a lot of my mates bantered me for it for a long time. But actually, after a couple of months, I didn't hear too much for the first few weeks. After a couple of months, people started taking notice of it. And I had a few people reach out saying, I've seen you posting on LinkedIn. I'd love some help with my own profile. And that was kind of a turning point for me because I thought, well, people are asking for help with LinkedIn, not the other stuff that I was trying to actually get. So I started kind of coaching people, giving a few people a bit of help with sorting out their LinkedIn profiles, starting to post content, very, very small projects at the start. But then over time, it started to evolve, and I actually graduated in 2020. And as soon as I graduated, obviously straight into the pandemic, I kind of had 6 months just to give this business thing a go. I thought, let's try and turn this into an actual agency.
Yeah.
And it was still me after the first 6 months. I didn't hire people until probably 6 months into like really doing it after uni. But at that point, it started transitioning into a full stack personal branding agency. And we've evolved over the last 5 years into something that's a lot more full service. But yeah, we started out really just with helping people sort their profiles out on LinkedIn.
And was that coming out of uni and starting your own business effectively? Were you head straight into that? Was it scary, or it just felt natural?
Yeah, well, it was the only path I was going to take
when
I got out of uni. I worked out, I had about 6 months of expenses left from my student loan to live. I was actually living in my girlfriend's spare uni bedroom in the house she was in for a few weeks. And then, worked out I had 6 months left of expenses. And I was like, right, I know I can do this for 6 months and give it a real shot. And if it doesn't work out after 6 months, I'll go and get a job. And I was quite content with that decision. Fortunately, it took off within those 6 months. And obviously a lot's changed since then. But one thing I'm very grateful for throughout the whole of that period was the support I got from the family. I think a lot of people, if they'd done that, they would have had parents questioning them, family and friends saying, this is a terrible idea, you need to get a job. One of the things I'm most fortunate for, and I guess the highest form of privilege I've had, is a supportive family who said, give it a shot. Yeah,
it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Especially when you're starting out.
Yeah.
So when you started out, it was COVID. Do you think that kind of helped, or because everyone was kind of forced to, I guess like any marketing activities were kind of stopped, so the only thing people got control over are the LinkedIn and the website, effectively, isn't it?
People couldn't go to networking events anymore, and they all turned to LinkedIn. So it definitely helped build the agency. People started to realize the importance of an online presence. So it feels strange to say it, but 100% it helped. And there was definitely an element of me being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think that anyone who's successful is right place, right time, huge factor in it. And what, in that early stage, what were you noticing was working on personal branding?
Mm. I mean, LinkedIn content was, at that time, LinkedIn was changing as a platform. So historically, I mean, there's probably a few people listening that think of LinkedIn as like the job search platform where you basically go if you want a new job. It started evolving out of that kind of platform. There's still a huge element of that, but it became more of a social media platform around 2019, 2020. So the people that started posting content in those early days, just saw the most amazing returns because there was such a small percentage of people doing it. It just wasn't the done thing. So the supply was very small, but there was a lot of people scrolling the platform every day. So just posting on LinkedIn back then, and to be honest, still now, is one of the best things you can do because there's only 1 or 2% of people actually doing it every week. So that was hands down the most effective thing.
When you started thinking that you needed to grow the business, how tough was that first hire? Or was it a simple decision to make?
It was, the first one was actually fairly simple because the first one I just brought on someone part-time. They were actually a student who were building their own personal brand on LinkedIn, and that's how I came across them, and I just hired them part-time. So it was the stakes were quite low.
Yeah.
When I started getting to 2, 3, 4 people on full-time salaries, that's when it hit me, and I was like, okay, this is quite serious now. Yeah, I'm responsible for people's livelihoods. So that's when it really started to hit me.
And did you, having come straight from uni, what was your just experience learning on the job of how to manage the team and seeing what works?
Literally everything I've learned was just doing it I've never had a proper job. I've never had an interview, so I had to learn how to actually interview people without ever having an interview myself, how to lead a team. Never had any experience with any of it, but my attitude was just figure it out by doing it. You know? And I've made so many mistakes. There are so many things I wish I could go back and change. I don't necessarily think I would change them, but so many things I would do differently today, of course. But that's part of it.
Yeah.
I could have read every textbook, but I think the learning curve would have been a lot slower.
100%. What's some of that advice you'd give your younger self, do you think, now?
Number one is don't let people walk all over you.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're 19, 20, coming into business, you're going to have that. People are going to see you as potentially vulnerable, potentially a weak link, and they'll try and just get their way all the time. So you have to really stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not just, it can be team, it can be potential clients. People will sense a little bit of weakness in you and try and use that. You've got to feel confident and stand up for yourself. Know what you stand for, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. One of my mentors since actually gave me a really good piece of advice around, the culture you build and the standards you set at your company. The example he used was if someone comes into your house, if some houses are like shoes off households, some houses are shoes on households. Yeah. Personally, I'm a shoes off household. You wouldn't just let someone come into your house, shoes on, stick them up on your sofa.
Yeah.
You'd say, you take your shoes off, please, right? I thought that was a really nice example of how you have to manage the culture in your company. You can't let people come in and just do it their way.
Yeah.
If you've got a certain way of doing things, you have to be really strict with that. So that was something that stuck with me.
We were talking about that exact example last week because we were saying interview process for us have always been like you try to make them a bit more relaxed so you find out the real type of person, but actually like what we're looking for, a bit of character or a bit of personality. Like how do you ask that in an interview question? So we were saying like what are the telltale signs of whether you can get someone's personality quickly? And one of the other directors said, well, when they walk in the house, what do you do? Do you ask, do I need to take my shoes off, or do you take them off, or do you just walk in and bowl in and like nothing's happened? And I think that's it. Yeah, love that example. So after you'd sort of grown the business, was the package that you were offering changing as sort of social media changed, or was it staying the same? Was it focused mostly on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's constantly evolved. I'd say LinkedIn is still a huge focus of what we do because I think it is still the number one channel that business owners should be building their personal brand on. So it's 95+% of our clients are using LinkedIn in some form, right? It's a huge part of what we do, but we now have a lot more of a focus on the positioning. Before we actually publish any content at all, one of the biggest things we work on is what we call positioning, which really is about getting clear on why people should listen to you in the first place, because that's going to be it's the unspoken question on everyone's minds, right? When you see someone online or they see you, they go, why should I listen to you? Yeah. Right. So getting clear on that and having a really compelling narrative around that is really important. So we actually do a lot of work on positioning before we get to any content. And that positioning presents itself through the profile, through the content, through even things like podcast appearances, how you show up in the media, how you show up on panels, speaking engagements, networking events. It's present throughout your whole personal brand. LinkedIn, as I said, is one way to amplify that and get it in front of more people. There are loads of ways you could do that. You could use Instagram, TikTok, pretty big advocate for YouTube Right. I think it's a very difficult channel to build, but I think if you do, it's extremely valuable. And then we also are now working with clients on the conversion side of their personal brand. So, they've got great positioning, they've built up an audience online. How do they actually turn that into clients, customers, speaking engagements, advisor opportunities, whatever it is for them? So we're doing a lot of work actually building conversion systems and funnels on the back end for them as well.
Because is that, I guess, for every client, that those metrics would be different. What do you think, what metrics matter when you're building a personal brand? Is it followers, engagement, or...
Yeah, so a lot of people will tell you, like, followers, views, engagement, they mean nothing. Those people are wrong. There's a huge asterisk on this, but they do matter, right? Of course, for the majority of business owners, if you're getting loads and loads of views on your content, but it's not translating into any form of business outcomes, you're probably not going to be too happy. But generally speaking, views, engagement, followers, they are all a means to achieving your end business metrics in the end. Life is a lot easier if you have more people that know who you are, like you and trust you. So if you're getting lots more engagement on your content, lots more views, all other things being equal, you've got more chance of having business outcomes on the end. The trouble with that is a lot of people completely sacrifice their positioning and just chase trends and hacks just to get the views up. Yeah, that's where you get lots and lots of views, but the business metrics don't translate, right? I actually quite like followers as a metric, because I think a view is it can be fleeting, especially on social media. This is slightly different for things like podcasts, YouTube, newsletters. A view on LinkedIn can be fleeting, or a like can be pretty fleeting. There are a lot of times where I've liked a post and then never consumed a piece of content from that person again. Yeah. But if you follow someone, you're essentially subscribing to having their thoughts in your feed every day. I think that's quite powerful. Yeah. Even more so when it's following a podcast or a YouTube channel or a newsletter, where it's a little bit more personal, a lot more, it's long form, takes a bit more time to consume. I think that's a really meaningful interaction. So followers is probably the best of the quote unquote vanity metrics that people talk about. Engagement rate, another good one. So engagement rate is out of the number of people that have seen your content, how many of them engage with it. That's a pretty good indication of how interesting it actually is to the audience, how relevant it is to the people that follow you.
And how important is I've heard this term, like, deplatform people. So that's either get them from LinkedIn to a place, whether that's a newsletter, or how important is that as part of the journey? Yeah,
it's vital. Yeah. I wouldn't, if you're sitting on a non-existent newsletter, you don't really have any social channels, you've got a few hundred followers or maybe a few thousand followers on LinkedIn, I wouldn't be worried about it just yet. But if you're in the kind of 5 to 10,000 plus follower range and you've not started thinking about it, that's the point where you've got to actually build that, because you own that asset. Yeah. The problem with a LinkedIn following or any social media audience is that it's borrowed. Yeah. The platform owns it. Right. And I actually had a thing in, I think it was 2021, maybe 2022. I actually lost my LinkedIn account. I had about 10,000 followers at the time. Right. They just banned it. Typically they ban profiles for like using automation or tools that don't comply with them. I wasn't using any of those. And I'm not the only one this has happened to. I can think of loads of people this has happened to. They just got rid of my profile. So I had to start again. Oh. You think about, Facebook 10 years ago, organic reach was great. Now it's pretty much non-existent. Twitter X has been an absolute, can I swear on this? Yeah. It's been a shit show for the last few years. So I think if you're borrowing your audience from social platforms, you're always at the mercy of the platform. Whereas if you have an email list, you own that list. Yeah. And unless you lose your own data, you never.
That's on you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's really important.
Amazing. And when someone's starting, so what would be your advice to? You spoke about kind of positioning. How do people find that position, or kind of find that authenticity of what they do?
There's probably a lot of people listening to this who feel like they're not getting the credit they deserve. They've got loads to offer, but they're not quite getting the credit they deserve, at least publicly anyway. And that's because they've not thought about their position too much. But that's actually a really good sign, because it means you've got a lot to work with. Everyone has a unique combination of skills, experience, expertise, personality that no one else can really copy. No one else is going to have that same combination that you have. And that's really what you want to lean on. The trouble with a lot of people is not that they don't have those things, it's that they're not communicating it in a way that's clear and compelling to their audience. So the first things I'd be thinking about is, firstly, can you build what we call a promise statement? So a promise statement tells your audience what they're going to get out of following you. So essentially what you have to offer to them, What value are they going to get out of consuming your content or engaging with you, listening to your podcast, working with you? Then you can build a proof statement. So a proof statement is a third-party objective credibility that you're worth listening to. Right? So, I mean, the one that I use is a really easy example. We've built over 300 personal brands. That'd be a reason why you might listen to me for advice on personal branding. Does not qualify me to give life advice to 50-year-olds, right? And that's why 20-year-old life coaches don't work.
Because there's a lot of them.
There's way too many of them. There's no proof statement there. Yeah. So the proof is kind of objective proof that you are good at what you do. That gives people a reason to trust you and listen to you. And the final thing is packaging. So packaging is how you actually, it's in the name, package up your unique expertise or value. That could be specific points of view you have. It could be a certain type of mechanism you use in your business to get results. It could be you have a particularly interesting or quirky personality that your customers, your clients, your audience love. So that packaging is how you differentiate from everyone else in your industry. And if you put those three things together, your promise, proof, and packaging, you've got a really unique and compelling personal brand that is authentic to you. You're not faking anything. That's not what personal branding is about. You're just communicating your value in a much clearer, more effective way.
And do you think that faking it is a big risk in personal branding?
It will never work long term.
Yeah.
You know, sure, it might work short term. I can't see how it works long term. I can't see a world where faking your reputation has ever been effective over the long term.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to make a quick buck and make a small amount of money really quickly, sure, go ahead. Right? It's not what I would do. I don't think it's particularly ethical.
Yeah.
But if you're in the game of playing business long term and you want to play a long term game, then there's no benefit to it whatsoever.
And sort of on the opposite side to that, what is the cost of not investing or working on your personal branding, do you think?
You'll always be your industry's best kept secret. You know, and there's no benefit to doing that. There's no benefit to being kept a secret. That's why people feel overlooked, because they have lots and lots of value to offer, but it's not public. There's that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I actually think we should go a step further. It's who knows you.
Yeah.
And if there are more people in the world that know you and trust you, I can't see a world where that wouldn't be a useful thing.
Yeah, 100% of that. How, I guess that I'm speaking from personal experience here, like how does consistency come into it? So I guess on the LinkedIn profile, like I follow you, your content's really good. And I guess what's really weird is I don't mind the content you put out, even though it might be repeat, whatever the repeat cycle is. I'm like, yeah, that's good. There's always a little bit of different on it, or there's a little different slant. But then I wouldn't do that myself. So how important is the consistency of posting on LinkedIn?
Yeah, there are two types of consistency you need. So one is the messaging. You've got to say the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. Ideally, you want to say it in slightly different ways. So I'm not talking just copy and paste a post. You know, there are times where if you have a really high-performing post, you might just use exactly the same thing 3 months later, and that's fine. But generally, across all of your content, you need to be reinforcing the same messages because people need to be reminded a lot more than they need to be told. And you don't build a reputation by saying something once. You have to say it over and over and over again for people to really start to understand it and associate that message with you. So your messaging has to be consistent. But then also the content you publish has got to be, and in the cadence, the frequency has to be consistent as well. A big problem a lot of people have is they'll go all in on content for a couple of weeks. Yeah. Post 10, 15 pieces of content, and then they'll give up. And then they repeat the cycle 3 months later when they realize they need to build their personal brand again. And that cycle doesn't benefit them at all. So you've got to be consistent in actually putting content out on a regular basis. That doesn't mean you have to post every day or 5 times a day. Post 2-3 times a week if that's all you can do. But make sure you do it for 52 weeks of the year, not for 3 of them.
Yeah. That is probably one of the biggest takeaways because I have done exactly that. And when someone said to me, you wouldn't do it with the gym, you won't go in the gym for 2 weeks and then be like, I'm not ripped yet. So like, it's the same applies here. It's like consistency. You won't see results after 2 weeks. You'll see it after a year. Yeah.
But on LinkedIn, people are comparing to the ones with like 100,000 followers or 500,000 followers. That's like going to the gym for 3 months and comparing yourself to a professional bodybuilder. Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense, does it?
And how if someone's starting that journey, here's the 5 things 5 things you need to do? How do they start that process?
Yeah, so obviously, once you've nailed your positioning down, make sure you optimize your profile around that. If we're talking LinkedIn specifically, I would optimize your profile because it's kind of like a personal landing page, sales page, website, pitch deck, CV, all in one. Right? And if you're going to the effort of creating content, you're going to be driving people to that page. All of that effort is going to be wasted if your profile doesn't say the right things about you. So number one, make sure your profile is optimized around the positioning that you've got. And then I would start thinking about the actual content strategy that you should be posting. A lot of people will tell you just post. I think that's terrible advice.
Right.
Because just posting tends to lead to average content, which gets mediocre results, which means you're not motivated to do it again. You give up, and again, 3 months later, you're back in the same position. Yeah. Right. So I wouldn't just post. I would think more about your strategy first and try and post better content. Sure, you've got to get going. You've got to get momentum and the habit, but that doesn't mean just forget strategy altogether. Right. I think about what do you actually want to achieve with it. There's probably only 3 things you ever need to do. You need to get in front of new people. So you need to increase the pool of people that know you exist. If you never increase the pool of people that know you exist, you're always going to be capped on basically what you can generate from your personal brand.
Yeah.
You always want to be reaching new people. You've also got to build trust with them. So that's the second thing. Build trust with the people that already know who you are. And the third thing is convert them to the next stage of your relationship with them, whether that's a client, customer, a lead, a newsletter subscriber, whatever that conversion event is for you. And then I would try and post content that hits each of those 3 things. If I was just getting started, I'd look to post between probably 40% growth-based content. So 40% of content to grow your audience and reach new people. That content should be a little bit more general, easy to consume, because you're reaching people that have never heard of you before. They're not going to spend 10 minutes, even 4 minutes. They're not going to spend like digesting a really in-depth piece of information. So it needs to be pretty easy to consume for people, pretty general, so mass market. I would then post probably 40% would be authority-based content. So this is the content to build trust. And that can be a little bit more in-depth. That's where you really want to show your expertise and give value to people.
So this is your proof.
This is, a lot of proof in that. Proving that you know what you're talking about. And then the final 20% is the conversion content. So how do you get people to the next stage of working with you? That might be a bit more promotional. So promoting your lead magnets, newsletters, podcasts, whatever it is that you want to promote. That's about 20% of the content you publish. And then I just try and hit each of those. So 40% for growth, 40% for authority, and 20% for conversion.
And that's like 3 times a week, 5 times a week, something like that.
There you go.
That works.
If you're posting 5 times a week, you've got 2 growth, 2 authority, 1 conversion.
Yeah.
Simple.
And how much of that work is done sort of prepared? How much is scheduled? Because I've seen that's something that you wrote about a little bit is, I think people think they've got to think of an idea, write it down, post it, and then next day do the same thing.
Yeah. I always batch create content.
Yeah.
So I'll sit down for me now it's 2 hours is probably enough. For some people, you might need half a day, but do that each week and create a week's worth of content, schedule it, and then you don't have to think about it again.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a busy exec or a founder or a business owner, you're not going to remember, or you don't have time even to do it every single day. Yeah. There's going to be fires that you've got to put out, things that you don't expect come up. You don't want posting content to be one of those things that you have to think about every single day. So just block out a morning, an afternoon, sometime every week where you can batch create content, schedule it, and then whatever you're doing.
Get on with your life.
Literally. Yeah. If you're taking the kids to school, you're off on holiday, you're in meetings, you know that your content is out there working in the background for you, building your reputation without you having to do anything.
And is there optimized times to post, or is that bullshit?
Generally speaking, we actually see there's a space in the morning that tends to perform quite well.
Yeah.
This is not don't treat this as gospel, right? This doesn't mean that if you post at 3 p.m. you can't get results.
Yeah.
Of course you can. Generally speaking, we see a morning slot between 7:30 and 9 tends to be quite good. Most people are obviously commuting to work, scrolling the phone, or they've just got to work, they're having a quick check before they get into their day's work. So that's quite a good slot. Lunchtime slot works quite well. Lunchtime slot's good if you're in the UK because you've got all of the UK on their lunch. You've got all of Europe and Asia that are still awake and maybe finishing their day. And then you've got the US audience that are just starting to wake up. So that's quite a good slot as well.
Amazing. And how do you tackle negativity? Is that something, because I've seen that people they'll start this personal branding, some like negative content comes out, and then they basically run off and get scared, which I can understand. But what's your thoughts around how you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, we've posted for ourselves and our clients in the last 5 years close to 50,000 pieces of content. I could probably count on one hand the number that have received a negative response.
Right.
You get the odd comment of people that don't agree with you. That is fine. In fact, if no one's ever disagreeing with you, I'd say you're not actually posting strong enough content.
Yeah.
But in terms of like actual negative, meaningfully negative responses to content, it's less than 5 out of 50,000. I'll take those odds.
Yeah.
And the reality is, for most people, they're not talking about things that are significant enough for that negativity to get picked up. Of course, in some cases, it can happen, right? But for the majority of people listening to this, they're drastically overthinking it. Yeah. Obviously, don't say things that are like that are ridiculous. Yeah. Don't be deliberately offensive. Or there's some obvious guidelines there, but I think people massively overthink the negativity that they're going to get. And someone disagreeing with you it's not a bad thing. In fact, that's actually a good sign.
Yeah. And would your advice be to kind of respond to that person, or is it just leave it?
Just respond maturely. Obviously, if they're being immature in their response, the best thing you can do is just ignore the comment.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any benefit into getting into spats with children, basically.
Yeah.
But if they've left like a mature comment but disagrees with you, just have an adult conversation, right? Two people are allowed to disagree.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. So just respond maturely. Don't get too defensive, but make your point.
Yeah. And going into it, do you think a lot of people, or do you see with some of the people you work with, that imposter syndrome comes into plays a big part of the reluctance to do it?
Yeah. And it's so funny. It actually gets worse the more successful people are. Yeah. Yeah. Some of the most successful clients we've ever worked with have the biggest imposter syndrome.
Wow.
And we're sat there as a team going, you just don't realise how much value you have to offer and how much people like us would want to listen to you.
Yeah.
But for some reason it gets bigger the more successful people are, which is really interesting. I can't explain it. I don't know why. But yeah, it holds a lot of people back.
And what's your advice to those people?
You have to build the habit of posting and get over yourself, right? That's
solid advice.
I wish there was a beautiful framework that I would use, but it comes from two things. Firstly, just the mental overcome of getting over yourself and doing something that feels uncomfortable. And the second thing is getting into a habit of posting. The first time you put a piece of content out, you're going to be really overthinking it. You're going to be worried about the response. Once you've posted 100 pieces, you'll be firing off content without thinking about it, just because you've almost become a little bit numb to it. You've done it so many
muscle
times.
type thing.
Exactly. So it's those two things.
Amazing. And slightly off topic of personal branding, but as you've grown your business and you're getting into different markets and your time's becoming more finite, I'd say, like, how are you finding, or what's your opinions on like work-life balance? Is that a thing for you, or?
Not for me. I've had a bit of flack for this recently. For ambitious people who want to achieve really meaningful things, I don't think work-life balance is a thing. Firstly, because if it was that easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
Everyone would have the 100 million business, whatever, right? Like, everyone would have a six-pack if it was that easy. If you're balanced, I think balance for a lot of people is an excuse for mediocrity. For the general population, for the guy that just wants to have a pretty standard job, wants to work a 9 to 5, earn a pretty average salary, and you're perfectly content with doing that, by all means, work-life balance is really important. But for the really ambitious, typically entrepreneurial type, or even if you're working in a job, you're not an entrepreneur, but you want to achieve significant things, someone next to you is putting in more hours. Like, you're competing with a lot of other people. The reality is you have to work really hard. You have to sacrifice a lot, and balance doesn't exist.
No, I agree. I think that is just you choosing your life. You're not choosing two separate things like my work life and my life.
Yeah.
Like, it's just you're choosing a life, and that's what the cost it comes with.
Yeah. I think a lot of people overthink it as well. Like, they get stressed when they don't have this balance.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that is self-inflicted. There are times where I'm almost getting frustrated with myself because I'm having to make sacrifices and not do certain things I wanted to, or I'm eating dinner late and I'm really overthinking, like, is it that
it's
big
big
of a deal?
issue, yeah.
Like, is it really that big of an issue? I think people make mountains out of molehills with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and for me, you're never doing that for like sustained periods of time. You'll have times where it's really busy and there's a lot of sacrifice, and then there's times where it's not as busy and there's not as much sacrifice. But I don't think you can complain when, like you said, I think if you're ambitious and you want to go somewhere, then that's the cost of entry, isn't it?
It is exactly that.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges you've had going into business and growing such a big business now?
Team is a common one. My partner's dad, I've been with my partner since long before I started the business, and her dad likes to remind me frequently of a conversation we had when I was just starting. He says, people will be your biggest problem. He was right. Yeah. And the team we have is amazing, right? Like I'm not, the team we have is absolutely brilliant. I'm so fortunate to have them. But what people don't realize is the more team members and clients you have, the more, I guess, opportunities there are for things to break down. Human error happens a lot. Humans have emotions, right? Yeah. And it's not just a case of, we've got 17 now, maybe 19 by the time this goes out. That's not 19 more opportunities for them. It's 19 people that all have relationships with each other that are then managing 45, 50 clients across the entire client base. And all of these people have different relationships and conversations. There are just so many more stakeholders and moving parts. And often it's not through malice or anything like that. It's just humans have emotions and disagree and see things different ways. So mediating that is a constant challenge. As I said, the team we have is absolutely brilliant, but I think however good the team is, you're always going to have this. The other is just the mental load of the responsibility. I think I've got through this stage now, but certainly for a good couple of years, this weighed really heavy on me. Going to bed every night, all you can think about is the team, the clients, even the smallest issues. Over time, numb is the wrong word, but you're almost a little bit desensitized to it. You realize that a lot of things are solvable very quickly. We're not, it's not life or death what we're doing. No. So you start to desensitize to it a little bit, but in the kind of middle couple of years, that was really, really tough for me. Yeah. A lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and the more people you get them, you can easily get lost in the letting it weigh on your shoulders if you don't kind of accept that you're only one person, you can only do a certain amount of things. I always, my kind of thing is the people are the best and the worst part of the job, because there's nothing better to see than when they get promoted or doing well or they smash a big client or anything like that. That's the most rewarding part, but also it's the biggest headache, I'd say, as well. Not intentional. I think the way you word it, it's not just that they're providing a problem, it's that you're multiplying the number of relationships by bringing them in, and like by the law of averages, you are going to have more issues because of that, and that's tough. What's next for personal branding as kind of AI and these new technologies come in? What do you see is changing, and how will that evolve over the next few years?
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be tempted to build their entire personal brands through AI, which I don't think is a smart move. Actually, trend is almost going the other way. There have been a few huge organizations recently that are starting to pay enormous salaries for people, literal hires, like physical people to come in and build content for CEOs. Like PayPal, I think the salary on that was like 200.
It's ridiculous, wasn't it? Yeah.
There was one that came out yesterday. I can't remember the company, but it was up to $1.5 million.
Wow.
For a head of CEO content, I think was the type of role. So the point of that is to say AI will not replace the human in personal branding. There's always going to need to be a human element. AI will definitely help. AI tools are getting a lot better. There are a few that we use now that are fantastic, but they don't replace an actual understanding of how to build a personal brand or your own expertise. You have to have that in place first. I think in-person will become more important.
Yeah.
As the level of AI content online increases, which it will, people are going to start to value in-person content a lot more, because I can't see AI doing this, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you could use Sora or whatever and fake two people on a podcast, but people will want to listen to us two, for example.
A normal conversation.
Exactly. So I think in-person will definitely become more important, and people will need to dial into creating content from lived experience a lot more. What I mean by that is, an easy way to picture it is the difference in how-to content and how-I content. So how-to content could be, I could say to you, here's how to write LinkedIn posts. But AI could do that.
Yeah.
What AI can't write is, here's how I've written 10,000 posts for founders and execs in the last 3 years. Right? So it's based in lived experience. I think that difference becomes more important as well. Cross-channel is another big one.
Yeah.
Easy to replicate a personal brand or create content, through AI on one channel. Difficult to fake that with AI across LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, a podcast, and a newsletter. Much harder to do.
And are they kind of the 5 most important areas for personal branding, would you say?
Those channels?
Yeah, those channels.
I would say, if I had to rank the channels, LinkedIn would be number 1. I'd rank YouTube pretty highly. I'd rank, when I say YouTube, I'll bundle podcast into that.
Yeah.
So like long form video content. Newsletters are definitely up there. And I think the others really are just dependent on the audience. If your audience on X or Instagram or TikTok, use those channels. But I think the 3 biggest ones over the next 5-10 years will be LinkedIn, YouTube /podcasts and newsletters.
And do you see is there going to be any new entrants to that market that will change that sort of what
I don't know in
using?
terms of channels, but I think if you can start getting on more stages, I think that's public speaking, I think will be a huge asset for people as well. Again, because just instant trust can't be replicated by AI, or at least even if it can, people won't want to consume a video of an AI created avatar speaking on a stage.
Hologram.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
So even if it does exist, people won't want it anyway. And I think it's just a huge amount of trust that comes with it.
And how do people do that? How do people make a start in getting on those panels or speaking stages?
Yeah. Positioning and content are the first 2 steps, so don't skip those. Those are still really, really important kind of building blocks in order to get there. It's unlikely that you're going to get on a panel or on stage if you don't have good positioning or a good audience on social. But you also need to essentially frame yourself for those things, right? So if you've never spoken on stage before, it's unlikely that you're not going to be charging 25 grand for a keynote, right? You're going to have to start small. So you want to start with maybe doing some podcast appearances, maybe doing a smaller panel, not trying to go for the big league straight away, and then sharing content from those over and over again. Best way to do something is to be seen doing that thing. So if you want to speak on stage, the best way to land speaking engagements is to show yourself speaking in other scenarios. So podcasts, as I said, smaller panels, and then build up slowly. Make sure you document all of that online.
Yeah, and is it about just repurposing that over and over again?
Exactly.
How much content is the optimal amount to make to kind of give you enough to talk about publicly on these platforms? Is that something that you look at?
Like how much content do you need to create for it to start working?
So if you were kind of wanting to get on panels, then you would create a podcast. How much of that work do you think needs to be done to give you enough to work with?
I would never evaluate the success of something in terms of personal brand anything less than 3 months, ideally 6. If you can do 3 to 6 months something and then look back and go, okay, is this working? I think that's a reasonable timeline.
Yeah.
There's not like a specific number of posts you need. Of course, certain piece of content will have a lot more impact. It will depend on your experience, your positioning as well. So there are a number of factors at play, but I wouldn't do anything for less than 3 months and then look at the results and wonder why it's not working.
And after 6 months, how much refining usually needs to be done? Is that a big process? Or I'm kind of thinking if you started posting and you noticed that one part of or one type of post does really well, do you try and double down on that and do more of them? Yeah. What's involved in that process? Yeah,
you definitely do. So the example here is, people don't want to repeat their greatest posts, even when they've performed well. What I say to people is, if you went to watch your favourite artist, who's your favourite artist or band or...
Stone Roses.
Stone Roses. If you went to watch Stone Roses, you wouldn't want to hear a load of new songs that you'd never heard before, right? You'd want to hear their greatest hits.
Yeah.
So that's the same for your audience. So yes, you definitely want to double down on the ones that have performed the best, because that's an indication. Your audience are literally saying to you, I like this. I really like this content. Yeah. So you should do more of it. You shouldn't be doing complete 180s in your strategy every 3 months or 6 months or even every month. There might be slight tweaks over time, but it's unlikely you're going to be doing complete 180s. If you're doing 180s on your strategy every 6 months, either you don't know your priorities, you're not focused.
And if someone wanted to start creating their personal brand, how important is it to work with a business like yourselves rather than go on their own, would you say?
Yeah. So I think if you have someone else helping you, whether that's us, another agency, one of our competitors, whoever it is, the benefit is they will see things that you can't see yourself. They will spot things that you think are mundane and boring. They will say that's fascinating. I think that is a huge benefit. It gets you out of your own head, and gives you a perspective of what other people think about you. Because we always downplay our own achievements, and we never really see the true value that we can have to offer. So I think that's probably the biggest part. We joke with our clients that you pay for personal branding and the therapy's free.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of people say it feels like therapy working with an agency. I think it just helps to talk through, the stories that you've been through, the things you've learned. There's a lot that you can unlock just by verbalizing it.
And what's that session look like? So someone comes to you with I need to change my personal brand. What does it look like to them?
So the very first thing we do with them is a 90-minute deep dive into them, their career, their business maybe, where they want to go in future. And that's the first therapy session. Yeah. We have a load of questions that we run through, but we'll go off on tangents as well. It's quite conversational. But that's the very first step because it allows us to get all of the information out of them. We can then pinpoint, right, this piece is really interesting. Maybe let's not play on that one so much. This is fascinating. Let's use that. And that starts to form the basis of the positioning and the strategy, yeah.
And something else I wanted to talk to you about. So we've kind of focused really on one person branding, but something that I noticed you do, or you actually post about it as well, is as a business, you will sort of pick different subjects across the business and you all post about those things, but then, which I thought was pretty good anyway, but then you also posted about doing that, which I want to know why that was.
Yeah, so it's kind of, result is more than the sum of its parts. We have, today I think we had 5 or 6 people post content from the business. On any given day, we'll have anywhere from 4 to 8 people post content. We'll each have a slightly different angle that we go down. For example, one of our growth managers, Charlie, he talks more about personal branding from a sales lens. Jake, our client service director, he's more from an agency side, like the relatability of working in an agency. We have Lewis, who's a little bit more operational. Like there are a number of different angles that we have, and we can all speak to a slightly different audience. It's still aligned with Kurogo's kind of messaging, but it's slightly different to each of our own interests, and that just captures a much larger audience. We're obviously all engaging on each other's content as well, which tends to boost the performance, and it's more touch points in any given day rather than someone just seeing my content. They might see mine and 3 other people in the team. It's a lot more familiarity. And then when they because when people come to work with us, typically they're not dealing with me day to day. They're dealing with the team, so they feel like they know the team before they get to work with us as well.
And how much of that strategy is done together? Is that something you work on as a team?
Yeah. So we're probably slightly different to most companies in that our whole team obviously understands personal branding because we do it day to day. So there's less guidance needed. But we do actually have an hour session every single week on a Friday where we all sit down. It's purely dedicated towards our personal brands, where we can share ideas with each other, share what's working, give each other pointers, sense check things with each other. So that hour session is really, really useful just for kind of giving each other guidance and, again, helping each other get out of our own heads. For other companies where maybe they're not natively personal brand people, there might be a little bit more strategy building for each person that's needed on the front end. But once you've got that, I think it's a pretty good platform for people to go off and start posting.
Amazing. And finally, so the name of this podcast, Raise the Floor, comes from a book called Do Hard Things, and kind of fascinated me that if you want to succeed, like how often should you be doing hard things? And basically it's all the time. But the whole concept was that we don't have to be a 10 every day, so you don't have to come in and break the world with a piece of content, I guess, every day. But if you can just raise that floor to be a consistency and coming in and doing like the difficult things consistently, that's what the great people do, I guess. So my final question is, what would be the golden nugget of advice to give people to raise their floor?
So I'll speak through a lens of myself and what's had the biggest impact on me. And it was getting a really clear picture of the type of person I wanted to become, the type of life I wanted to live, and understanding the minimum standard that the best version of Sam, the minimum standard that they would expect, and getting a really clear picture of, what those standards look like. And some of them are slightly more theoretical. Some of them are very specific, actionable things that I would try and do every day or every week. So I would create a clear picture of what that kind of minimum standard looked like. What's the hygiene standard for the best version of yourself? Once you've set that, the most important thing is to never let other people lower it. Never accept a lowering, because once you accept a lower version of the standard, you've set a new standard altogether. And that's almost the hardest part. It's not setting the standard, it's avoiding the temptation that often will come from other people to lower your own standard. Never accept it.
Yeah, I think as well, you'll be pushed to lower it by customers sometimes, change your values. If we'll give you work if we could just do this, and that's tough to kind of say no, basically.
Yeah. Could be customers, could be family, could be friends, could be team. There are so many sources that will come in and try and lower the standard. You just have to not give in.
And what are some of those non-negotiables for you?
For me, I train at least 5 times a week. I try and go every single day. I always do at least 6 hours of focus work. If I'm on, I have days where I'm obviously completely off. But if I'm on, it's 6 hours of focus work. I typically, I do things like try and eat a whole food diet 80% of the time. Not perfect, but I know if I get 80%, I'm good. I drink vitamin supplements every single day. These are kind of the minimum things that I know if I do those, then I'm set.
Yeah, amazing. Appreciate your time, and
it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Sam.